desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall and keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know, and keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all with your wings entwining. You better face the fall. Zero, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. Are you okay? I'm not that sure. Forever young, or am I faking? On the tip of my tongue, there's a sarcasm waiting for you. I'm willing to trade my soul for a bit of your charm. There's no way I'll fade into oblivion, 'cause I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. There's mud on the floor, desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all, and with your wings entwining, you better face the fall and keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know, and keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all with your wings entwining. You better face the fall. so young? Or am I faking on the tip of my tongue? There's a sarcasm waiting for you. I'm willing to trade my soul for a bit of your charm. There's no way I fade into oblivion, 'cause I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. There's mud on the floor, desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes, when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. And keep trying again.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here to the high banks of Talladega as we prepare for race number 11 of season 52 of the RTG Talladega Challenge Series. More importantly, it's playoff race number 2, elimination race number 1. 13 drivers began this journey, and at the end of this checkered flag, only 6, I believe, will be moving on to the next round. I'll have to double check on that. Maybe, actually, I think it's 7 are moving on to the next round, but we're certainly going to be whittling down our playoff field considerably. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Freemile. And Zach, I mean, we talk about it every single week. Different drivers, different agendas, and a lot of times those agendas conflict, which end up leading to the dreaded big ones. So what do these drivers got to do here tonight to at least make sure they're going to make it to that checkered flag?
I think drivers on the bubble are going to have to get to the front and stay there. And I think anybody that thinks they're comfortable needs to make sure that they're keeping an eye on those guys that know that they are in trouble. Because even though we know we have 13 drivers currently, as you mentioned, about half of that is going to be wiped out. One of those drivers definitively being the 39 of Josh Metallic, who is not here tonight. But yeah, you got to keep an eye on those guys. Point swings, point swings, point swings. Seth, that's all we've talked about. So I think it's going to be another one of those nights.
Absolutely. Well, a driver that we're used to talking to quite a bit, finishing up there inside of the podium, and a former winner this season, finds himself coming into tonight's race behind the cut line. He's looking to make the playoffs after being a multi-time winner last year and not being able to make the playoffs. Let's see if we could talk real quickly here with Jeremy Jeffries. Hey, Jeremy, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, guys. Yep.
All right, man, you're coming into this race trying to advance into the next round of the playoffs, but below the cut line. What is the mentality for a driver that's in that kind of a position when you're getting ready to take to a track such as Talladega?
Oh man, I gotta try to stay in the top 10 all day and just stay out of trouble. I had a terrible week last week. I ended up finishing last, so I can't afford that, definitely.
Hey, Jeremy, Zach in the booth real quick. I see you qualified about 14th tonight. I heard you just mention you want to get to about the top 10. Is that your goal? Get up front, stay there?
Yeah, I mean, trouble can happen anywhere, but I feel like it's going to be easier to miss the less cars I have to dodge.
All right, well, Jeremy, we're going to let you go here. I know you guys are about to roll off the grid. Best of luck to you. Hopefully you can advance into the next round, and maybe we'll talk to you tonight in Victory Lane.
That would be awesome. See you guys later, hopefully.
So no surprise, our front row, it looks very familiar to what it's been pretty much all week, every week this season, except sometimes it's been in a little bit of reversed order. It's Joe DeSpirito picking up the pole position again here tonight alongside of Bob Seminara. Bernie Mobbs makes it a Florida Boys 1-2-3 as he'll be alongside of Jason Scheck in row 2. Rodney Sullins and Grant Wesley make up row 3. Wesley's another driver that's right down there on the bubble. Mark Paglia, Tim Nofsker in row 4, and then Donnie Garrett and Jessica Shelton complete the top 10. Chuck McClure alongside of David Cannon in row 6, Billy Elliser and the driver we just talked to, Jeremy Jeffries in row 7. Row 8 finds Bob Dixon and Chris Elliott. Jerm Lewis will be alongside of John Godfrey in row 9, and then Wiley Coate and Jeff Crivello going to complete the top 20. Todd Mallory, who visited the Stratosphere last week, he's going to be 21st alongside of Dave Melson, Richard Martin, and Gary Hurst in row 12. 25th will be Manny D alongside of Robbie Nices back in the 54. Tonight, then, Glenn Harris and Dante Ricky, our winner last week, the only driver coming tonight that's locked in the next round of the playoffs. They're going to make up row 14. Hank Middleton and Doug Woolley will be back in row 15. Andrew Miller, Cy Jones, and Wing Pribnow will be the tail end of the field. 33 drivers will take the green flag here tonight in race number 11.
Seth, I think it's going to be a really interesting race here tonight. We see a lot of our big dogs starting toward the front of the field, others scattered a bit throughout, but a lot of those big names that we see need to make big moves, they are starting right up there toward the front.
They definitely are. I mean, you look at some of these guys like Bernie Mobbs. He's one of the drivers that I'm kind of eyeing in terms of good starting track position, just based on the fact that he comes into this race 10th in the playoff stands. And I did check back. It is 8 drivers that are moving on to the second round of the playoffs to determine the final 4. So at the conclusion of tonight, 5 drivers will be eliminated. Right now, the drivers in those cutoff areas are Jeremy Jeffries, Bernie Mobbs, Hank Middleton, Chris Emery, and of course we know that one of the drivers that will not make the next round, Josh Metallic, after hard luck last week and currently on vacation this week. So 4 drivers now are the question marks of who are they going to be that are not going to advance into the round of 8.
Here we are, playoff race number 2, green flag in the air. Joe DeSpirito, he got up through that gearbox real quick. He's about pulled away from the 712 of Bob Seminara on that outside line, but that outside line going to make just a little bit of a comeback here through the corners. This DeSpirito slides up high. That's going to leave the bottom open for Bernie Mobbs. Heading down the backstretch, they're going to be side by side.
Bernie Mobbs, a big push from Rodney Sullins on that inside line. You see them now shift up to 4th gear as the cars kind of bogged down a little bit there off of turn 2. Mark Paglia 3rd on that inside line as the top side has DeSpirito, Bob Seminara, and you want to talk about a wild card driver perhaps. How about Jason Scheck in that 5 machine? I believe this is his 3rd start on the season. He hasn't run all the races, but he could certainly be a factor into who's going to advance into the round of 8 and who isn't.
Keep an eye on that number 5 car of Scheck. As you mentioned, he is one of the original veterans to this super speedway series, dating all the way back to when it was still the MSR Tally Challenge, if I am not mistaken. So he's running right up there. You see him running 5th alongside the 38 of Rodney Sullins. Just behind them, it looks like it's going to be the 28 of Paglia alongside the Grant Wesley machine, about halfway down the back straightaway now. Joe DeSpirito and Bob Seminara, they got those 2 cars before you get to the inside of 90 of Mobbs, heading off down there into turn number 3.
Based off of everything that took place in our first playoff race last week, nobody is safe except for Dante Ricky. 33 drivers took the green flag here tonight, so if we took 33 points and put it from 2nd place down to the cutoff line driver Grant Wesley, well, we've got less than 33 point separation there. If you go to the drivers behind Grant Wesley, down 9th through 13th, well, down 9th through 12th will actually count. It's less than 33 points. So any driver here tonight can either fall out of the top 8 or point their way into the top 8.
Absolutely, and we saw Joe DeSpirito involved in an absolutely hellacious wreck last week that put him in a big hurt as far as points were concerned. Remember, he came into last week's race the point leader, leaving last week, ended up coming out 4th position, 17 points behind his teammate Bob Seminara, who is the current point leader coming into tonight's race. So Seth, all season long, that has been a big conversation that we've had, is big swings in points, because we've seen some guys get up there and make some runs, but if you're not winning, chances are you're either running real close to the winner, or you've been out on the wrecker already.
Another thing here tonight for these drivers that's on the line as we inch closer and closer to the conclusion of this season is, of course, the RTG Tally Challenge All-Star Race, the Super Speedway style All-Star Race. And drivers that go to victory lane this season here in the Tally Challenge, they would advance, lock themselves into that All-Star Race. Everybody else having to partake in the All-Star Open. And at this point in time, we were talking with one of the RTG admins, Terry Ballman, before we came on the air. There's only 16 drivers that are currently locked into the All-Star field, which means there's going to be a lot of drivers vying for those limited number of qualifying positions.
Absolutely, and RTG has put the word out, hey guys, this All-Star Super Speedway Open on April 22nd, make sure you come out and run it, because we have had a lot of repeat winners and repeat champions the last couple seasons, Seth. I believe Terry said that it's only locked about 12 cars in, so there's going to be a big field for that Open, and they're taking more than the regular 7 that they would typically take in a normal season. So they really want to let these drivers know, hey, make sure that you're out there, you're ready to run this open race. And if you're currently running like you are here tonight in season number 52 and you're out of the playoffs, getting one of those victories also punches your ticket in.
Now, it's interesting, in pretty usual Dante Ricky fashion, we saw him qualify towards the rear of the field, did not lay down a lap time, I don't believe, but since he's got that win in the bank and he knows he's advanced to the next round, instead of kind of hanging back like he normally does for the first 10, 15 laps, he's actually starting to make a charge already, has found his way up into the top 20, knocking on the door of the top 15, and we're only 6 laps in.
And we heard Dante say last week that win number 3 in a row, that was a statement victory, and he was going to continue to keep trying to pile bonus points onto that, because remember, the bonus points that you earn here in the first stage of the playoffs, that carries over into round number 2. So all these guys got all that on their mind as well. Right now, Jason Scheck's number 5 machine, he was going to try to make a run on the inside, but nobody would run with him. He's fallen back to the front bumper, the 88 of Nofsker into the trial.
Nofsker looks like was able to let him in, as if he hadn't, more than likely Jason Scheck would have fallen back to around the 7th, 8th position, which is where we see our 3-wide formation. Jeremy Jeffries caught in the middle, Dave Melson on the top side, Chuck McClure down on the bottom with help from Bernie Mobbs.
And that's not where that 8 machine of Jeffries wants to be, in that middle. They always call it on TV when you watch those super speedway races, the sucker hole, and it really kind of is. Once you've got 2 cars on either side of you, it is really easy to lose that draft on the car ahead of you. As you see, he's struggling to keep up with the 003 of Cannon right now, but Dave Melson looks to have the advantage on the high side.
You also got Mark Paglia down there in the 28. Now, as I mentioned, last season was entirely different in terms of the playoffs. Only 10 drivers made the playoffs last season, with the new rules format this season, where drivers in the top 10 in points and any race winners somewhere between 11th to 20th the standings making it in. 13 drivers made it into the playoffs this season, which means more drivers getting eliminated. Paglia and Josh Metallic were the 2 drivers eliminated in the first round last year. We know Metallic is going to be eliminated in the first round this year, but right now, just looking at drivers that might be making a case for themselves to get up above that cut line, the only driver right now that looks like he might have a shot of doing so is the 90 of Bernie Mobbs. We've yet to really see Hank Middleton make his way up to the front, and he's actually had quite a number of good runs this season. Chris Emery is not really up here at the front either. Right now, he finds himself, is Emery in the field tonight? I don't think he is. So actually, we've got 2 drivers then that would be confirmed not advancing to the next round.
Absolutely. I didn't realize that he hadn't taken grid either myself, Seth. So unfortunately, that's going to be 2 drivers already eliminated. So that takes a little bit of pressure off those guys that were close to around the bubble, because you don't have at least 2 less cars that you have to be concerned about competing for points with. But at the same time, that's still going to be 3 cars that we're going to be sending home at the end of the night.
And I think too, we talk about it every week, how we go back through previous season statistics and everything, and we do that just because we try and find trends. But when it's a track like Talladega week after week, you can't really rely on trends because every race is a surprise to you. Well, Grant Wesley last season had a very strong car in the playoffs, actually picked up a win during the playoffs. I believe it was playoff race number 4, advanced into the final 4. Who would have thought 1 year later we'd be talking about him as the cutoff line driver for the end of round 1?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a couple guys like really that you could put into that conversation, especially seeing, as this race plays out and how it comes to a close. There could be more than just one guy that made the Final Four last year that could, very well end up going home. So it's definitely something that we got to keep an eye on. It's been sort of the nature of the unpredictability that has been the Tally Challenge this season, because as I mentioned earlier, if you weren't winning races or finishing in the top 5, chances if you weren't in those first 5 cars, you were probably going back on a record, because we have wrecked, I would say, probably close to a record number of cars, the number of big ones that we've seen throughout season number 52. Seth, I don't think I've seen it quite this bad on any other season in recent memory.
No, absolutely. And, a lot of times we attributed it to the fact of like the situation of the race. A lot of them were races coming down towards the end of the regular season, drivers trying to make last minute moves to advance into the playoffs, as we got to move here for second place. Wesley, Melson, and Martin going to try and go to the inside of Despirito and Seminara. We talked about, like last week, we thought that it was drivers trying to make sure they lock themselves into the round of 8, but another thing we've attributed to are these large field counts. I mean, last season there were definitely good car counts. We ended up having anywhere from 25 to 30 drivers that would take the green flag, but we've had at least 3, maybe 4 fields this season that have exceeded 35 cars. I think we've had 3 races where 37 drivers have taken green flags.
Yeah, you are correct, Seth, and this is the smallest field that we've had to date so far in season number 52, but so far everybody clean and green. Grant Wesley is pulled to a little bit of an advantage down to that low side, but right now, Despirito, he's going to fight back with help from the 712 of Seminara in that middle line, but don't look now, up top. Whoa, big move there. Despirito going down low in front of the 88 of Wesley, but Jeffrey's trying to make ground with help from the Middleton machine up out of 4.
He's making up ground, and a lot of it, as he's dragging Hank Middleton, Jerm Lewis, Gary Hurst, Wayne Pribb now on that third line. They picked up about 3-4 car lengths on the other 2 lines down the back straightaway. They're making up more ground here on the front stretch, so it's going to be 3 wide for the third position between himself, Martin, and Seminara going into 1.
I'm actually kind of surprised that that top line isn't making more progress than what they are. Set that middle line right now, only 3 cars with between Seminara, the 84 of Ricky, and the 90 of Mobs, but they are holding their own, and as they do so, they're kind of pulling that outside line backwards with them, which is something that we haven't seen a whole lot traditionally.
And now Jeremy Jeffrey's actually going to abandon that outside line, jump down to the middle lane. So that middle line's going to have to start getting themselves formulated if they're going to make forward progress, because to your point, yeah, both the middle and the outside line seeming to be dropping back. But it's kind of interesting, too, because I remember, I think it was last week, where Jessica Shelton was leading that third line, and I thought that they were going to get up there and we were going to have 3 wide for the lead, and on 2 occasions, it's just that outside line seemed to lose momentum. I don't know if it's a case of drivers just not willing to get up right to the back bumper of the car in front of them, so the draft's not that tight. The fact that maybe they're just trying to give that inside line, or that middle line, I should say, a little bit more room, and it's affecting their speed as well, but there's just some kind of underlying factor that's kind of unknown as to why the momentum seems to happen for that outside line and then immediately seems to kind of pewter off.
Well, and as you say that, Seth, I'm also watching something else that's kind of interesting as well, predominantly, especially over season 51 and 52 up to this point. That middle line has been where it's at, but everybody's seeming to sort of get into a single file sort of situation right now. We're still 5 laps from green flag pit stops, but I think it's the first time that I can remember that we also have single file with cars running predominantly on the bottom groove of the racetrack.
Absolutely agree with you. The middle line, as far as we've known, has been king. It's where everybody wants to run. It's where you get the better straightaway speed. Running down the inside line, yes, it's the shorter way around the racetrack, but you actually lose 1 to 2 miles per hour coming off the corner, and that translates into slower speed, especially down the long back straightaway. Maybe one factor that's coming into play with these drivers choosing to run the inside line is we are starting to tiptoe into the neighborhood of green flag pit stops. I mean, somewhere in the next 3-4 laps, they're going to have to start thinking about that.
Absolutely. So the guys down low, you know that they're not in any rush to move up out of that low line because they're right where they need to be for green flag pit stops coming up here pretty quick. But Jeremy Jeffries, Bob Seminara, Dante Ricky, Hank Middleton, they're just kind of stuck there behind that 94 of Shelton, aside the 17 of Chuck McClure, and that's been really where they've been the last 3 or 4 laps. So they will start to lose just a little bit of momentum here at the end of the backstretch. And just as I say that, Jeffries pulls back alongside the 94 again. So it's kind of like they're just stuck. They're right there. They're running the pace that inside line is running, but there are only 4 cars, and they can't match that draft and momentum that inside line. Oh, big move there.
Definitely a big move as Bob Seminara just barely tucked in front of the 17 of Chuck McClure. Now we've got them all double wide, but the first side-by-side battle is for around the 7th position. Now, there's actually some stuff on the line for other drivers here tonight, aside from advancing into the playoffs, and that is in terms of bonus points as well. We know that Joe DeSpirito picked up 30 bonus points, or I'm sorry, make that 3 bonus points rather, for winning the regular season championship, and of course that helped him to head into the playoffs as the number 1 seed, but there's actually bonus points that carry over from round 1 into round 2. Dante Ricky has already laid claim to 1. That is 2 points that he gets for having a win here in round 1, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the regular season champion Joe DeSpirito also gets 2 bonus points that carry over for being regular season champion, regardless of where he ends up finishing in if he does finish up here inside of the top 8. But in the case of DeSpirito, you talked about the hard luck he had last week. I mean, Joe's 4th in points, and he is only 13 points ahead of that cut line. It is plausible that a driver that has won back-to-back championships could maybe, if bad luck strikes here tonight, not advance past the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know that he knows he needs to keep out of trouble. And remember, the caveat to those 2 bonus points carrying over is, like you said. Oh, and our first round of green flag pit stops, it looks like McClure, the 38 machine, the 28 of Paglia, they've all ducked down low. I don't see anybody in the grass or out in trouble right now. So everybody going to make it in pretty clean and green. But what I was about to say there, Seth, is DeSpirito, those 2 bonus points will help him in round number 2 of the playoffs, but he has to get to round number 2 first.
Exactly. Tim Nofsker also on pit road, along with Hank Middleton, Bob Dixon, Manny D, Andrew Miller, and Cy Jones. So only a handful of cars coming to pit lane here at the conclusion of lap 18. Looks like we're going to have more drivers coming down pit road. The chat bar is lighting up. We'll see how many are going to come down this time.
All the hands waving out the window right now. It looks like the 24 of DeSpirito and the 88 of Wesley there sitting pretty comfortably right now. Both of them going to come in, trying to see if there's any trouble behind them. But again, everybody looks to have made it in relatively clean and green. And Seth, that is a whole lot of race cars.
That is a beautiful formation coming down pit road. Upwards of maybe 20 cars coming to pit lane, some 3 and 4 wide, but everyone giving room, being aware of each other's braking zones, and they all cleanly made it onto pit road. So now it's all about execution. Make sure you don't speed on pit lane, have a good pit stop, and try and get out, see if you can gain a couple spots above where you were running when you came to pit road.
Absolutely. And I think of that entire pack that just came down on the pit road at the same time, I believe there may have only been 4 or 5 cars that actually stayed out on the racetrack. So I see the first group of cars being led by McClure just now coming into the tri-oval. So by the time these guys get to turn number 1, McClure and company will easily have come across the finish line. Those 3 cars probably going to have an advantage once they get themselves onto the back straightaway, but that's a whole lot of cars that they're going to have to compete with, catching up with them in the draft in a couple laps.
Jason Scheck on pit road, and we were focused on the 00 Flame Prib now, just making sure he would make it back to pit lane because he ran out of fuel midway down the back straightaway. He does indeed make it to pit lane, so that car will not be stopped on the racetrack. We will not have a caution, and look at the run. Chuck McClure, Mark Paglia, and Tim Nofsker they blew around Joe DeSpirito as well as Dave Melson and Grant Wesley.
I think DeSpirito was happy to let them blow around him, though, because he got the wake of their draft pretty well, and that sucked him real quick up to the back. Oh, man, big move across the nose of Melson. Fortunately, Melson saw it coming there and wisely backed down. Melson now will reestablish that line on the outside line. But, yeah, like I mentioned, Seth, those 4 cars, they motored by them. But I think once this group of cars gets in line the way that they need to be, which is not being helped with the side-by-side in the 24 and 038 right now, they're going to get a big run on them for sure.
Joe right now probably saying, hey, let me in. We can catch these top 4. But nope, he's going to get shuffled all the way back to around the 9th position might have a space opening up here behind Dante Ricky in the 84, as now, after pit stops, Chuck McClure out in front. I mean, we've documented this season. Pit road quite a number of times has been the bane for this 17 machine, but he executed pit road there and now is out in front. McClure coming into this race third in the point standings, 14 points ahead of the cut line, and still looking for his first victory in at least over 2 seasons.
No, if you remember a few weeks back, Chuck McClure did get a win through the season.
That's right.
So
He
is not a stranger to victory lane in season number 52. But yeah, for sure, pit stops have been a major issue for the 17 throughout the entirety of season 52 for that 17 machine, and not just in this series and many of the series he competes in. But that's something that I think a lot of people probably don't quite understand if you're not behind the wheel of the race car, Seth. There is a lot of time to be gained and or lost under green flag pit stops, so you've got to kind of be pushing those limits. And man, I'll tell you what, it doesn't take very much to go just over the limit and end up in big trouble because of it.
Yeah, if you remember back to last year's season finale when John Godfrey went to victory lane, we talked about where he came down pit road. I think it was only 3 other drivers. It was a formation of 4. And I think that was an opportunity for time to be gained or lost. There were only, 7 cars that came down when McClure, Paglia, Nofsker, Hank Middleton, when they all came down pit road. So it allows you to actually concentrate a little bit more on gaining on pit entry rather than having to worry about everybody else around you. That group of 20 that came down pit road, the priority first had to be make sure you don't run somebody over, make sure somebody doesn't run you over. And so time could have easily been lost with the fact that you were having to kind of set priorities aside from trying to get the best possible entry into pit road.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because we saw this kind of happen the last couple of weeks as well, Seth, where green flag pit stops do happen and it breaks up the field. Right now, it looks like that second group, they're not making any sizable gains on that first group of cars, but that could still change, a simple lane change or a line change. But I also think a lot might have to do with that being that lead group just simply has more cars and they're coming up on more to put a lap down. So that's not going to help that second group any. They're going to continue to get pulled away from.
That would be the last 3 drivers on the lead lap right now: Bob Dixon, Jason Scheck, and Chris Elliott. Now, Bob Dixon and Jason Scheck were some of the last drivers to hit pit lane, so obviously they didn't come out with a bunch of drafting partners. I'm not really sure what happened to the 9 of Chris Elliott to have him this far back. I'm pretty certain he came down pit road with that big group of 20, but he is now going to be the first car put a lap down. Scheck and Dixon next on the list, as they're just going to not be able to compete with this group here, about 13 cars that are all lined up nose to tail.
Absolutely. So I think, it kind of stinks to be put a lap down this early on, but we also know that those cars aren't damaged. So should we get a yellow flag, at least 2 of those cars would be eligible for the wave around. So they'll be trying to tuck up behind that number 8 machine and just maintain draft. And this lead pack moving at the clip that they are, they don't have to worry about any of those other cars behind them catching up either. So I think if you're Bob Dixon, if you're Scheck, or if you're Chris Elliott, you don't mind. You don't want to be a lap down, but it's early enough in the race to still be able to come back from.
As things stand right now, just looking at the fallout from that green flag pit stop cycle, the driver that I'm a little bit worried about with where he's currently sitting is Billy Elliser, winner earlier on this season, right now mired back in the 19th spot. Now, he is in the second group of race cars, but they are running 5 seconds behind the top 11. The reason why I'm a little worried about him if things continue on the way they are, he was only 1 point to the good above the cut line, and he was only 7 points ahead of Jeremy Jeffries, 16 points ahead of Bernie Mobbs, and 21 points ahead of Hank Middleton. Middleton's run up inside the top 5. Jeffries is just outside of the top 10. So this 26, we don't have a live point standings up in front of us, but if my calculations are correct right now, that 26 would be on the outside looking in.
Absolutely, but don't count him out. Remember, last season, we weren't sure what the 26 was doing, and he found his way into the playoffs. If you remember that, Seth, he was kind of one of those drivers that really surprised us. Even though we know that he could run strong and consistently, he's also one of those sleeper factors. I don't want to call him an underdog because he does have one of those victories, but race ain't over till it's over.
Well, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it back during the first elimination race last season? He got caught up in a wreck and brought that wounded race car across for a high enough position to actually advance into the round of 8.
He absolutely did, and that's why I say don't sleep on that 26 car, because I think he's probably just playing it pretty safe right now, which most of the leaders, as you can obviously see out on the field, there's nobody side by side, nobody trying to make any moves, because they know that there's more to be lost than there is to be gained, especially when the field is broken up the way that it is. You're going to be closing in on your next round of green flag stops in about another 8 or 9 laps, so it's just kind of sit here, see what happens, hope all the cars hold together, because you never know. It's not always a wreck or a big one that brings out the yellow flag here at Talladega. So the last few weeks, we've seen our fair share of expired engines as well.
That's absolutely true. So anything can happen here, despite it looking like it may be a long green flag run. As saw a driver falling towards the back of this lead group. I think that's actually the lap machine of Jason Scheck. I think we have 3 lap cars that latched on to this lead group of 11. We then have a second group back there, which holds 12th back to 21st. Then there's a third group out there of 4 race cars, 22nd back to 25th. And then another group of 5 race cars, 26th on back through 30th, 3 lap machines. And still going to be a while until we end up seeing that that group of 5 I just talked about, including Robbie Nice's, Todd Mallory, Cy Jones, Glenn Harris, and Wade Privnow get put a lap down. They're running roughly about 24 seconds ahead of this lead group.
So we've got a little bit of a chance to breathe. We know that's probably what the drivers are doing as well, but look at this. Mark Paglia having a really strong run after having to miss the first few weeks of the season with a family emergency, but he's bounced back quite well. And, you know, he's one of those guys that, again, as we mentioned earlier in the race, Seth, he may not be competing for the playoffs right now, but if he can go up there and get himself a win, not only does that say, hey guys, I can still do this even if I'm not in the playoffs, but that would also lock him into that super speedway all-star race on April 29th.
Absolutely. There's a lot of drivers right now up inside of the top 7 that have been really close to finding victory lane this season and just couldn't seem to close out the deal. Paglia being one of those, Tim Knopfsker another, Dave Melson and Richard Martin back there as well in 6th and 7th. I mean, there's a lot of drivers that are still eyeing their first win of the season that are not in playoff contention. And you know, I've talked with a number of drivers that didn't actually advance into the playoffs, and I've actually been told it's kind of a little bit of a weight off their shoulders. Yes, they're disappointed that they didn't make it into the playoffs, but it gives them one less thing to think about. They can just laser focus on trying to put their car in victory lane now. They don't have to worry about points. They don't have to worry about consistency.
Absolutely. Go out there, get one of those wins. The 088 of Tim Knopfsker, he might be one of those perfect examples of that. He missed the playoffs this season after losing a win earlier in the season, which would have locked him into the playoffs. So, you know, he's one of those guys that he doesn't have to worry about points anymore. He doesn't have to worry about the playoffs, but he's more than capable of getting the job done and getting it into victory lane.
Now, McClure, Paglia, Knopfsker, and Middleton, these 4 were some of the first to duck onto pit lane. So when we eventually get, if we do reach that second round of green flag pit stops, just got to keep the camera focused on them because they're going to be the first ones to jump onto pit lane. Probably more so that 17 because he's been out in front now for 12 laps, saving the fuel of everybody else behind him, but using up his own.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we're probably going to see him in another probably 5 laps or so. We're about halfway through lap number 32 here at Talladega, playoff race number 2 of season number 52. As we documented coming into the race, Bob Seminara was our point leader after a number of our drivers that were toward the top of the playoff grid last week ran into big trouble. A lot of carnage, a lot of cars taken out. So now, guys, just to recap for anybody who may have just tuned in, guys trying to get themselves back into positions to point their way into the next round of the playoffs or hopefully avoid that bubble right now. Lap number 33, Chuck McClure, our leader, off in turns number 1 and 2.
Still single file here amongst the top 11. There's 14 cars in this lead group. You got an intermingling of 3 lap machines. Chris Elliott in the 9, Jason Scheck in the 5, and Bob Dixon in the 143. Is one thing I'm noticing here with them running single file that we saw them do at the midway portion of the season, but then they kind of realized we're getting a lot of bumper grab wrecks. Maybe we need to stop doing it, and that is the pushing, the hard pushing. With them being lined up single file, it gives Mark Paglia a better opportunity to be able to line up his front bumper with the back bumper of Chuck McClure, and he has literally been shoving McClure down the back straightaway the last couple of laps.
The last couple of laps, yeah, absolutely. But something that I'm seeing that's also been kind of interesting to keep an eye on, with the amount of bump and shove drafting that we have seen this season, these guys behind that Paglia machine, if you watch the Nofsker car, he's not really so much getting up to that rear end of Paglia. He's staying about a half a car length back. Hank Middleton is on the rear bumper of the 088 of Nofsker, but Nofsker looks pretty content to just run there in third position. So I think that might be another thing, Seth. Another reason we're seeing the single file without guys trying to make moves. Nobody's making any runs. Nobody's attempting to make any runs at this point of the race.
Maybe a little bit of half throttling going on there with the 088, trying to save a little bit extra fuel.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely feasible, and he's got the two of Middleton behind him, pushing him real hard. And we know Middleton being the fourth car back in the draft, he's been able to save fuel on his own anyways. And Grant Wesley behind him in the 88, we know Grant coming into today just needed a really solid day to stay above that cut line because he was the driver on the bubble coming into tonight's race. So he's also not looking to make any waves. Fifth place to Grant Wesley right now is looking pretty good.
Well, back on, I believe it was February 18th, we ended up having our quickest race of the season, an average speed of 161.082. There were 3 cautions intermingled in that. Last year, we had 2 races go completely caution-free, and the fact we've now run more than half of this race under green flag conditions, we could be looking to set the record here in season 52 for the quickest and highest speed race.
Absolutely. Mark Paglia, he sticks just a fender underneath the 17 of McClure just to see maybe, or to signal to that 17, hey man, I'm coming into pit this next time by. As you see everybody else, they jump down there and hug that yellow line set. So I wouldn't be surprised if this time or next time by, we see that 17 McClure machine lead the 28088 and 2 car down onto pit road.
Let's see if they're going to be able to get down there safely. They're going to have a lot of drivers behind them. We'll see if that other group actually is going to come down with them as well, as it looks like they're going to stay out this time. But, I mean, you know, guys like Grant Wesley, Dave Melson, Richard Martin, they only pitted 1 lap after the top 4 did. Do they stay out still for that extra lap, or do they think there's safety in numbers? Why don't we just pit with this top 4 when they come to pit lane?
Well, there's definitely safety in numbers, but if you remember, there's also a lot of danger in numbers when large group of cars try to pit all at the same time under green. So I don't know. If it was me, Seth, I think I want to come down with those top 4 cars. They got out front and nobody was able to compete with them, and I don't think that I want to take the chance on them doing that same thing. I want to be able to get out, maybe make up some positions on pit road, or, you know, coming off of pit road even.
So far, of the 36 laps we've completed, 35 of them have been led by playoff contenders. Only 1 non-playoff driver has led a lap. That is Jason Scheck, as Chuck McClure, Grant Wesley, and Joe DeSpirito so far have been the drivers to pace the field here tonight. And we are now in the range where drivers would have to start thinking about coming to pit road, especially those top 4. These top 4 were down pit road at the conclusion of lap 17 on their first round of green flag pit stops. They have now gone about 21 laps. This is about as far as they could go, and we even saw a driver try and come to pit road. I think it was on 19 going on to 20, and Wayne Pribnow, and he ran out of fuel on the back straightaway, so you don't want to be in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, no, you don't want to run yourself dry because that's not going to do you any favors whatsoever. But there were a couple cars that pitted last time by a lot of drivers waving their hands out the window, signaling that they are coming into pit this time by, including your leader, Paglia, Nofsker, Middleton, Wesley. All these drivers, Spirito is also coming in with Melson, Martin. They get in cleanly. The next group of drivers, they're going to, oh, nope, 1 car sideways in the grass, Seth, at the entrance of pit road.
See if we can find out who that is. John Godfrey in the 711, but it is on pit road, so it will not bring out a caution. Tough break there for Godfrey, who was 16th last time by at the start-finish line.
So I think almost that entire second pack came in to try to make sure that they were on that same strategy as that first pack. And I think that might end up working out well for a couple of them. Joe DeSpirito, usually you see under yellow, that first pit stall is a big advantage getting off of pit road. Under green, he's going to lose 3, 4 positions, it looks like, by the time that they merge back up onto the racetrack.
And now we got 4 drivers hitting pit road this time around. Dante Ricky, who's already locked into the next round. Jeremy Jeffries, Chris Elliott, Jessica Shelton. Bernie Mobbs is also in, along with the 26 of Billy Elliser. So we'll wait to see who the race lead's going to cycle around to. And it looks like it might still be, well, I was going to say might still be Chuck McClure, but Nofsker with a big push from Dave Melson's now going to push his car. He gets hooked up into the wall, to Nofsker. We under caution?
Yellow flag is out. Yellow flag is out. I'm not sure if that was a case of bumper grab, Seth, or if the 88 tried to tuck right in front of that 17 but wasn't clear. But he came up across the nose of McClure's machine and went hard into that outside wall.
From first glance at the camera angle we had, I think it was just a case of trying to clear himself and he wasn't clear. Trying to tuck up there in front of Chuck McClure. We'll go back and take a few other camera angles there, but tough break there for Tim Nofsker. And certainly I don't think anything that these top 3 wanted to see with a caution coming out, because up to this point, they had this race pretty well in hand.
Yeah, to be completely, and I'm sorry for screaming in your ears, Seth, and race fans at home. That honestly caught me completely off guard. I don't know if maybe it was a case of Nofsker thought that he had that momentum enough to hope to maybe let the 17 hook onto his bumper as soon as they got off into the corner, but just drove right across. It just looked like at a glance, without having seen the replay, he just drove right up across the left front nose piece of the 17 machine. So big disappointment.
The thing I'm a little bit confused about here too is he had a huge push from Dave Melson, and there was a bit of a gap from Melson back to Joe DeSpirito. I'm surprised that Nofsker decided, if he was trying to tuck up in front of the 17, that he elected to jump up there then, rather than trying to tow Dave Melson behind him, and then the two of them letting the 17 in line third in line there.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. And like I said, that's why initially I thought maybe there might have been just a little bit of bumper grab that might have contributed to that, but not so sure now that is actually the case. But a big change of events, and that really changes the entire complexion of what this race has been up to this point, so.
Oh yeah, I mean, it gives 20 cars a new chance to be able to get up here to the front. The field, prior to that green flag pit stop, the first round, they were split up into 4 groups. Now they're all going to be lined up nose to tail. We're going to actually take an onboard here with 17 of Chuck McClure. I mean, he held his line there. The 088 comes up. That's a confusing one, and I think we're just going to be left guessing on that one until we're able to maybe after this race talk with Tim Nofsker, find out what the thought process was there. The good news, I guess, after all of this, 40 laps completed under the green flag, and so far only 1 car has ended up wrecked with our only caution of the day.
Well, only 1 car to this point, but I have a very strong feeling now, Seth, is we'll probably be taking the green with about 22-ish laps to go. So everybody's definitely going to have to come down and likely top off on fuel one more time. But I don't know. I think if you were riding at the front of the field, this yellow flag is not what you wanted to see, because you felt as though you might have had some form of control and, maybe been pretty clear of the chaos, but not anymore. Everybody's going to be right back into the eye of the storm again.
Going to put more drivers back in competition as well. Looks like Cy Jones in the 7. Not sure if he is coming. Oh, I guess he is going to come down pit lane. I thought he was maybe going to take the wave around. I believe that Chris Elliott and Robbie Nisus, they're actually going to be the 2 lucky dog drivers here under this yellow. So 31 drivers will be back on the lead lap when we go back green. And look who has now positioned himself up at the front. The driver we talked with pre-race, Jeremy Jeffries, and he said here tonight he has to finish well. The pressure is on for this car because he came in behind the cut line.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy is more than capable of winning. He has done so already this season. Remember, he did so last season, but wasn't able to make the playoffs. So I think the catbird seat right now, probably a pretty comfortable position to be in. So as it stands right now, none of our playoff grid that was able to start the race tonight has run into any major issues to note, whether it be on the racetrack, on pit lane, anything like that. So everybody going to be able to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief here, but it kind of makes you wonder about the guys that are a little farther toward the back of the pack. Now, the only reason that this field separated as much as it did under green flag run, Seth, was because that lead pack had so many more cars than that second pack did, and we know that there was fast cars in that second pack still.
Absolutely. Two drivers that we haven't talked about tonight that are playoff contenders that were trapped back in, I think, the second and third groups prior to that last round of green flag pit stops that now have a shot of getting up here and have been drivers that we've seen in the last couple of weeks that have made their way up into the top 10, top 5 in the closing stages. The 77 of Donnie Garrett now will be restarting back in 13th, and the 56 of Jeff Crivello will be restarting in 16th. So, these are now some drivers that we really were not seeing up inside the top 10 early on in this race. I get the feeling this caution was exactly what the doctor ordered for them.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that these guys are going to be back to 2 and 3 wide racing relatively quickly. The surprising factor of the night, aside from that yellow flag, was the fact that, predominantly that bottom line being the quick way around after the field got single file. Nobody was able to make any moves, but we're getting to the point here where we're going to be pretty close to 20 laps remaining, and there's no more wait. If you're going to make any final moves to try to get yourself in a position to win this race, now's the time to start thinking about it.
Should get the 1 to green signal this time around. And a correction on my part, it's going to be Chris Elliott and Cy Jones that are actually going to be the 2 drivers to get the free pass under this yellow. So Robbie Nisus, Bob Dixon, they'll be hoping for another quick yellow to come out to put all 33 cars back on the lead lap, as Jeffries, Shelton, Melson, DeSpirito, and McClure. That's going to be your top 5, with Middleton, Paglia, Bernie Mobbs, Richard Martin, and Grant Wesley your top 10. We're going to be going back green officially with 23 laps to go. The furthest number we've ever been given is 21 laps that you can stretch on a tank of fuel. So these drivers are anywhere from 2.5 to maybe 3 laps short of making it to the finish.
21 laps under green flag conditions, unless you're the 88 of Grant Wesley.
Well, that wasn't green flag conditions. He had 3 or 4 pace laps to work with in that one.
Absolutely, but if push came to shove, he would take it again in a heartbeat, especially sitting where he is in the points right now. So, Grant Wesley thinking about making some moves to get back up there toward the front. So as we rack him back up, look at Jess Shelton in that number 94 car. Now, remember, she took 2 or 3 weeks off this season after finishing in the top 4 in the playoffs last season. Man, she's sitting pretty right now, Seth.
Definitely is, and right now I believe she and Jeremy Jeffries might have a little bit of an alliance going on here. She was actually helping to push him towards the front, and I think they came down pit road together on that second round of green flag pit stop, so we'll see if they kind of do the Joey Logano coined okie dokie here on this restart, see if they can get the 8 clear of the 94 and get themselves formulated up. Dave Melson back there in the 038. We saw him trying to help push Tim Nofsker to the lead before Nofsker got wrecked. So now he's got to find a new drafting partner. And Chuck McClure and Mark Paglia, they've been hooked up nose to tail most of this race. They're going to line up on the inside line, 3rd and 4th there in that row. So keep an eye on those 2.
Looking at that car and sitting in that 4th position, Seth, and the Jaws theme song is just playing in the back of my head on repeat. So these cars slowly going to work their way through the Tri-Oval. Dodge Challenger pace cars reach the end of pit road. Flagger with green flag in hand. He will wave it. Jeremy Jeffries with a huge jump there on that restart. Man, that timing, the way that he got up through that gearbox, and it doesn't look like Jess Shelton rolled over either, but the 8 car just a rocket ship faster than Matt Rodriguez through a stop sign.
We were wondering if a reference like that was going to be made tonight. I applaud you for that segue. Jeremy Jeffries has got options now of which lane he wants to block. He's going to block the middle line with Shelton and Despirito. Despirito looking like he wants to make a move. He's got McClure and Paglia back there behind him as well. The question is, between now and the checkered flag, will we see yet another horrific wreck? We've had quite a number of big wrecks take place in the last couple of weeks.
Yep, and we see right now they are side by side for about the 6th position out on your racetrack. That is going to be your first side by side. I don't see any 3 wides quite yet coming down to the line. I think drivers just trying to pick what lines they would prefer to run at this point, but Jeremy Jeffries, he has slid up into that middle line. So the first time that we've seen the middle line kind of come back to life so far tonight, and all these drivers single file through about the top 7 down the back straightaway. Richard Martin, he's going to clear the Middleton machine, making your first side-by-side between Grant Wesley and Hank Middleton into turn number 3.
We're talking about the 24 of Joe Despirito, and for those that like statistics out there, last year, obviously this season, we ended up having one less race in the schedule than we did last season. But if we're going to take the elimination race, the first elimination race of round 1, Joe Despirito is your defending race winner. It was his 2nd win of the season and the middle race in a 3-in-a-row streak that he was on.
Yep. And only him and Dante, to memory, the only 2 drivers that have been able to pull off 3-in-a-row streaks. So, you know, Joe Despirito probably took notice of that after Dante brought it to victory lane last week. But so far, Despirito looking pretty comfortably running behind that 94 car of Shelton. Those first 3 cars in that middle line, they've got a 3-car draft working into turn 3.
Another driver that's starting to work his way up here to the front. How about former champion Doug Woolley in that 99? There you see the red and blue Target Ford Mustang back there behind Billy Elliser, of course, the champion back in season 48, and you know that he'd love to get back to victory lane.
Absolutely. All of these guys, they are hungry. And we see now the first 3 wide there. Donnie Garrett looks to be down low on the inside of Woolley and Crivello. Man, Despirito, he's warping pretty good up front now. Looks to have stabilized out just a little bit, but it looked like Crivello's machine and that 99, man, they came awful close as they went 3 wide down into turn number 1.
Off into the corner is very difficult in 3-wide formation to be able to give room, especially for that middle line driver. You talked about drivers getting stuck in the sucker hole. I mean, it is so difficult because your car is moving left and right. You're trying to give room to the bottom, trying to give room to the top, all the time trying to make sure that you're making forward progress instead of dropping to the back.
Absolutely. And right now we had a line that was trying to work around the top of the racetrack that has fallen back to the middle. Hank Middleton has now decided he's going to try to work the extreme inside line with the help of Donnie Garrett, but there's still about 9 cars back alongside the Billy Elliser machine in 1 and 2.
Donnie Garrett, 3 second-place finishes this season. We talked to him last week where he ended up finishing 2nd place, and he said, man, I'm getting tired of these runner-up finishes. Well, the driver that helped him to almost win one of those races was Hank Middleton. Now the roles are reversed as Garrett is trying to help push Middleton to the front.
They seem to be working pretty well here together at the moment. They don't seem to be too close. As they come down off turn number 4, Garrett's machine will give Middleton just a little bit of a push down in the tri-oval, but now it is the 43 of Martin as well as the 038 of Dave Melson who will dive down into the front of the 2 of Middleton. They're going to try to make the run on the inside of Mark Paglia off into 1 and 2.
I had these drivers projected about 2.5 to 3 laps short of making it to the finish. It's actually worse than that. Most of these drivers are about 5 laps short of making it to the checkered flag. I'm hearing that when they come to pit road, some are going to have to take on about a can, others going to have to take on about a can and a half of fuel. So the question now is, when do you pit? Do you wait until that tank is run dry to take on the lowest amount of fuel, or do you maybe try and short pit, come to pit road early, and subsequently possibly miss the big one?
See, that's a hard call, Seth, because if you come early and there isn't a big one, you could find yourself in big trouble without any drafting help. So I think you really have to pay attention to what the cars around you are doing to be able to make that decision on what's going to be the best for yourself, because you don't want to be the guy that tries to short pit it with just a couple other cars and then come to find out, you know, that ends up putting you on average about, contact. Big contact, almost a big wreck between the 28 of Paglia and 8 of Jeffries. Both drivers gather it back up. That's going to hurt that low line, middle line, now the advantage into 3.
Yeah, the contact appeared to not even affect Jeremy Jeffries as he continued to make forward progress with pushes from Jessica Shelton and Joe DeSpirito in that middle line. It's now McClure on the bottom. Jeffrey is on the top. We'll see who's going to lead this lap this time around. It might be a dead heat between these two.
DeSpirito is having a lot of connection issues, and we've seen this cause big issues in the past, and man, it is really bad right now. Jess Shelton does not even want to be in front of that number 24 car. She's going to move up to that outside line. DeSpirito still with a big side-to-side wiggle, almost getting into the car inside of it.
This is the tough part for Joe DeSpirito, too, because a lot of times when the car is warping, admins will ask that car to drop to the back. Well, how do you drop to the back if you're stuck in the middle 3 wide, completely boxed in?
Absolutely. And how do you drop to the back when you're in the middle warping side by side? That makes that even more difficult. Now the 712 of Seminara having a little bit of warp. Man, Seth, we were worried about gas. We got to be worried about internet connections right now.
Oh, gracious. Both of these drivers have been plagued with internet problems in the past, and now coming down to near 10 laps to go, they're having it strike again. And bear in mind, these are two drivers that are not yet locked into the round of 8. If they end up having to drop to the back, that's a lot of spots they could lose, a lot of points they could lose, and boy, it would be horrible if connection problems is what would eliminate two drivers that were inside the Final Four for the championship last season.
Absolutely, and with about 10 laps to go, it's absolute worst time that this could happen because that leaves you no time to try to make up any ground. Joe DeSpirito, he's stuck in the middle about mid-pack right now. He can't do anything. Even if he wanted to, there is nowhere for him to go. One car into the outside wall in 3 and 4. He peels it down off the banking. Going to be okay, still clean and green. Now McClure getting a big push from Melson into the tri-oval for the lead. Jessica Shelton leading that extreme outside line at this point, but right now that inside line with about a 6-car advantage over that extreme outside.
It's almost no sense of trying to do points in my head because there's drivers up here at the front that were behind the cut line. There's drivers at the back that either were the cut line or were just ahead of it. I think we're going to just have to wait for this all to settle out, get to the checkered flag to figure it out, as now it's Andrew Miller getting crowded down almost to the yellow line as Mark Paglia forces his way in. Jeremy Jeffries, oh my goodness, second time tonight he's stuck in the middle line with no help.
And you see just below him is the 24 of DeSpirito. Remember, DeSpirito was running in the top 3. That is how much that momentum loss hurt him. They're now trying to struggle to get back into the top 10. Jeremy Jeffries continues to fall back. He's in that sucker hole. No help in front of him, no help from behind. Only one place to go, backwards.
Now, so far here today, we've only really had one incident on pit road involving one driver, that being the 7-11 of John Godfrey. We've only had one incident take place on track. That was when Tim Nofsker brought out our only caution of the day. So these drivers, at least for the most part, have proved they can get on pit road all together in a group of 20-plus cars. The thing is now, though, this is the money stop when they come to pit road. So they are going to push it a little bit harder than they did back on lap 20.
Yup, so somewhere in about the next 5 to 6 laps, we are going to see guys who absolutely have to pit for fuel. Right now, that inside line, again, as they were earlier tonight before the field got broke up, they are content to stay on that inside line because they know, barring an early yellow flag, they are going to have to make another round of green flag pit stops. And Seth, yeah, don't even bother doing math right now because depending on if we have another big wreck, which is very possible as Donnie Garrett touches the apron off of turn number 2, barring a big wreck, we've still got green flag pit stops, which is our numbers. We can't predict them right now. It's impossible.
And you talked about with the fact that the internet connection problems were happening at this point in time, late in the race for Seminara and DeSpirito, no chance to be able to mount a comeback. Same can be said for pit road. You've got to execute perfectly on pit lane. You cannot afford a speeding penalty this late in the race because the odds are not in your favor of being able to combat that.
Absolutely. So these guys, and I really think, Seth, they are going to stay out as absolutely long as they can, right until they know that they have only about 1 lap remaining before they run out. They're going to have to come in. But that brings up another question. If they run it as far as they can, depending on how short some of these drivers may be, how detrimental a wreck coming onto pit road can be, and again change the complexion of the race for a second time.
Yeah, because we've seen coming onto pit lane at the entrance of pit road, sometimes a wreck will bring out a caution if the cars slide back up onto the racing surface. But in the case of what we saw earlier on tonight with John Godfrey, there's no guarantee that a pit road incident is going to bring out a yellow. And if you're behind the incident, you've got to slow down, make sure that you're going to get around that car. That's going to lose you time. But we might not get to that round of green flag pit stops. They are side by side all the way back through the field. Hank Middleton leading the top, Chuck McClure leading the bottom, and bear in mind, in this formation, they're probably all going to have to come to pit road together in about the next 4 laps.
I'll tell you what, once that 2 car got out in front of that 94, that middle lane, they rocketed out to a big lead, and a huge advantage Middleton has in that middle line right now. It's now Middleton, Shelton, Seminara in that middle line before you get back to John Godfrey. Oh, trouble!
That's Grant Wesley in the 88, Joe DeSpirito in the 24. We've got a car flipping in Crivello. Jason Scheck is upside down. Dave Cannon, Todd Mallory, Bob Dixon, Andrew Miller.
So at least 3 playoff competitors involved in a lap 57 wreck off of turn 4. That complexion change we just spoke about, Seth. There it is.
DeSpirito is on pit road. That car is demolished. It's still too early to say, but yeah, exactly what you're thinking. That could be championship hopes over for Joe DeSpirito.
How many cars did we have out before this wreck? Because
None. They were all still running, all 33. A couple were a lap down, but all 33 cars were still running.
Depending on how this plays out, because as you mentioned, Jeremy Jeffries was also, or Grant Wesley, my apologies, was also involved in this wreck. He was our bubble driver, Jeff Crivello, who was securely in the 6th position coming into tonight's race. It looks like Crivello may still be out on the racetrack right now, so assuming he can get to the end of the race, a couple points may pay huge dividends for that 56 car who came in 6th place in points tonight, Seth.
Well, Joe DeSpirito might have been able to drive away from this incident. The reason that he had to teleport to pit road, as we look at the replay, the car went up into the catch fence and never came back down.
The crew is servicing the car, Seth.
DeSpirito, who came into this race only 13 points ahead of the cut line. Can he hang on? Can he pull a Billy Elliser from last year and salvage just enough points to advance into the next round of the playoffs?
They've changed to all 4 tires. All your leaders, by the way, have come down onto pit road. Of course, right now we are looking at the 24 of Joe DeSpirito, the most prominent playoff driver involved in this massive accident in turn number 3 and 4. Were he to suffer a DNF tonight, could potentially take him out of championship contention entirely, but the crew did change all 4 tires on the car. They saw off the nose of the car. They take the hood off the car. We'll have to look at the rear end of it. That thing right now, Seth, looks like an asphalt modified out there at Talladega.
Hey, if it runs, get it out there. That's the goal right now for the 24 machine. Now, Grant Wesley, we're going to look at him. It looked like the brunt of his impact was to the rear end of the car. He did get some air, but it doesn't look like he's nearly as damaged as a number of other drivers. And Jeff Crivello, I think it might be between him and Joe DeSpirito as to whose car is faster, because he's now got roof damage, rear end damage, as he was sandwiched up into the outside wall when Grant Wesley spun up the track.
Just a big incident there heading off into turns number 3 and 4. That happened about a halfway point of the pack where, as we have been talking, several notable playoff contenders had been stuck running. Now, if not for those connection issues suffered about 5 or 6 laps ago, Seth, Joe DeSpirito would never have even been in that position.
That's a great point. We're going to go on board with the 24 car. Yeah, he and Grant Wesley were running back here in the mid-pack portion of the field. Wesley had actually gotten caught in the middle line and dropped back, and as you mentioned, DeSpirito falling back because nobody wanted to run behind his machine when it was warping, and putting themselves back in the proverbial hornet's nest. So Joe DeSpirito is back out on the racetrack. He is 1 lap down. So the highest DeSpirito currently can finish, it looks like, would be in the 30th position. That is barring who would end up getting the lucky dogs under this caution. It might be that the highest he can finish is 32nd. So there's going to be a lot of comparing from the 24 to the rest of the other competitors around him as to whether or not the back-to-back champion might have his chance for 3 in a row snuffed out here in the first elimination race of the playoffs.
Yeah. You never wish ill on your competitors, but if you're that 24 right now, you are really hoping those guys that are at the forefront of the playoffs have some sort of an issue with just a few laps remaining after we go back to restart to kind of keep his hopes alive, because of course, being as how he didn't go a lap down until after this yellow flag came out, he is not eligible for the waiver round under this yellow flag. So we will have to see if there is another quick yellow. He might be able to get that waiver round spot, but like you mentioned, he may just be relegated to that 32nd position here with only 7 laps remaining.
And the issue for both him and we could throw Jeff Crivello into that mix as well. Crivello is still on the lead lap, but obviously with the damage we saw he sustained, he is not going to be up to speed. It may not even be enough to be holding down that final 8th position, because if you look at some of these drivers up here towards the front, Hank Middleton, Jeremy Jeffries, these are drivers that were outside the cut line. If they win and move their way into the top 8, that's going to knock somebody out of the top 8 that was previously holding one of those spots. So, you know, the win and you're in situation could end up eliminating either the 24 or the 56 here tonight as well.
It's absolutely plausible. So Jeremy Jeffries, as we've mentioned, he is back up to the 7th place. Now, if you remember, Seth, he also fell toward the back of the pack after he lost the draft. So luckily was able to work through that incident out on the racetrack, and he's back in the top 10. And for a guy that came in here below the cutoff line, that's got to be just a little bit of a sigh of relief.
This caution was a huge break for 2 playoff contenders. Bernie Mobbs in the 90, after all this, is now up in 5th, and Billy Elliser was able to make his way through the carnage. He is now up to 13th, so these two might very well be moving their way into the round of 8. But again, the issue is, Zach, we're not home yet. We're still gonna have, I believe, 5 laps to go when these drivers take the green flag again. And with Robbie Nisus and Bob Dixon going around to get their laps back, right now, the highest Joe DeSpirito can finish here tonight will be 31st position with where he currently runs 1 lap down.
Yeah, and that's a big blow to that number 24 car. So, you know, we saw him get in big trouble last week, which put him in a bad position for this week. And unfortunately, between some connection issues and just wrong place, wrong time, typical sort of Talladega, he may, you know, he's fighting for his life right now, and he's doing all that he can do. Right now, up front, let's reset the field for you. Bob Seminara is going to be your leader back to green. Look to the outside of that front row, Seth. 3-time winner on the season consecutively coming into this race, Dante Ricky.
And Dante Ricky picked up that 3rd win last week on a late race restart, so almost a bit of deja vu for him.
Absolutely. And he told us, if you remember in Victory Lane last week, that was a statement win for him. He wanted these guys to know he is here to seriously contend, not just through the playoffs, but for the championship in the final race of the playoffs. So again, tonight, he's going to try to do everything he can do to try to get 4 in a row. You know how hungry Hank Middleton, Donnie Garrett are. Bernie Mobbs would love to get a victory. Jessica Shelton, we know how hungry she is as well. So a lot of really hungry competitors up here. And again, we reiterate, if you are out of the playoffs but haven't won a race in the last couple seasons, if you win a race tonight, you're still eligible for that all-star race on April 29th. So there's a lot on the line still, not just playoffs.
Absolutely. Right now, the entire top 5 is comprised of playoff contenders, 6 inside of the top 7. It'll be 5 laps to go when we take the green, and from this point on, next flag will end the race. If the caution comes out, the race ends under yellow. If the white flag comes out, we race back to the checkers. They're good on fuel. It's go for broke time here as Bob Seminara, Dante Ricky head into the restart zone. final restart of the night here at Talladega.
Dante Ricky with trouble already at the start-finish line. 4 or 5 cars involved, spinning down the racetrack. More wrecking into turn 1. Todd Mallory up in the wall. The 088 involved. The 26 Elliser involved. Jeffries involved.
And we're going to keep it here on the race leaders because we are racing back to the caution flag with this being less than 10 to go. Look at the formation on the top side there. Hank Middleton has found Donnie Garrett. They're going to take Bob Seminara on the top side. Dante Ricky's got a choice to make here in 3 and 4. He'll jump to the bottom. Middleton stays up top with Garrett. He's alongside the right rear.
Middleton is definitely going to have the momentum coming off of turn number 4 with the help of the 77 of Garrett. Nothing Dante Ricky can do. Middleton has cleared. Oh, and there's more contact in the tri-oval. That's going to throw off the entirety of the draft. Ricky battling back on the inside of Middleton at the line. Middleton
noses ahead. The race should end under yellow, and Hank Middleton, who came into tonight's event below the cut line by 20 points, just won his way into the round of 8.
Hank Middleton, I'm not sure when the last time that he won a Tally Challenge race, though, fought his way to point himself into the playoffs here in season number 52, will steal away the win in playoff race number 2 here in season 52 in the Tally Challenge. And Seth, I think we're about to have a big old celebration down in Victory Lane.
No doubt about it. Jessica Shelton made a 3-wide move through the tri-oval. That killed the momentum of the top side, and I thought maybe, just maybe, Dante Ricky was going to charge back on that inside line. It came down officially to 21 thousandths of a second at the start-finish line. Hank Middleton denying Dante Ricky's bid for 4 in a row, and subsequently locking himself into the round of 8. Looks like Donnie Garrett finishing 3rd. He will lock himself into the round of 8 as well, with Shelton and Seminara right now being scored the top 5.
Man, oh man. We hate to see a race end early, especially with as much as there was on the line, but as we noted, involved in that accident right at the start-finish line, the 8 of Jeremy Jeffries, the 88 of Grant Wesley. Seth, these were 2 guys that were 8th and 9th coming into the race tonight and are going to lose a tremendous amount of track position as a result of this. Joe DeSpirito now holding his breath.
Absolutely. Right now, Joe, the first car, 1 lap down, will finish 31st here tonight. Wesley currently scored 21st, and Jeffries all the way down in 28th. That could very well be his hopes of advancing into the round of 8 gone. You asked about the last time Hank Middleton went to victory lane in a Tally Challenge race. It was the same year that he made his last playoff appearance, season 49, on March 5th, 2020, when he went to victory lane. And now, after a long winless streak, he's going to be back in victory lane here tonight. And I don't know. What do you think? Hank Middleton maybe making a case for himself to be one of those 4 drivers for the championship as well?
100%. Hank Middleton is looking for this championship. He's one of those guys that we've talked about throughout the entirety of season number 52, Seth, where I said, hey, keep an eye on this number 2 car because he is more than capable of getting up there and competing for wins and championships, as we have seen. He started off a little slow this season in season number 52, but if memory serves correct, through each week, that 2 car just got a little stronger and a little stronger, and this is the result of it. I don't think it was just the yellow flag coming out to end this race prematurely, Seth. I think this number 2 car would have been a serious contender for the win had this race not ended early as well.
Absolutely agree with you. Now, we have had a driver retire out of the race early. That is Jerm Lewis, and why we're putting so much emphasis on that, that's a position and a point that both Wesley and Jeffries will pick up here under pacing.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I'm not sure what happened to the 616 of Jerm Lewis. He abruptly pulled it off the racetrack on the back stretch. I thought his car was still under power, and he just put the window net down. So I'm not exactly sure if that was to help somebody in points or what that was, but a very strange retiree there. As we saw, Jerm Lewis, he was another guy that was in contention all season long trying to get into the playoffs and came up just short last week.
Now, we've still got 2 laps to go here under pacing, so we've got the opportunity to go back and see what happened to bring out this final caution of the day. This happened around the 5th position, and because of that, a lot of drivers were able to sneak through and will be salvaging top 10s here tonight as well. How about Wiley Coate running 6th? Chris Elliott, who was the first car put a lap down here tonight, he's going to finish 7th. Rodney Sullins, David Cannon, and Wayne Pribnow. That's your completion of the top 10.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of names in there that we kind of go, whoa, those guys had really good runs. But I think they're also guys that, you know, they've run pretty well over the course of the season and got swept up in a lot of bad luck tonight. They were able to work their way through a little bit of luck on their side tonight and really shows in the form of finishes. But to note, Jeremy Jeffries, Seth, he has officially retired. That is the end of his night. So mark another position that Despirito is going to benefit from.
Wow, tough break there for Jeremy Jeffries. Probably the driver that hates being put in the same sentence as the word cut line. Last year, it was the cut line of top 20 as he was trying to work his way up into a playoff spot. And here tonight, it was cut line with him being the first driver behind said line to advance into the playoffs. Looks like that will not be the case here tonight for the driver of the 8 as we continue to look at angles here of this incident. And, you know, these drivers realized what was at stake as well. They knew that the next flag was going to end the race, and there were about 4, 5, 6 rows back that were shoving the lines ahead of them. It just led to bumpers not being lined up and led to that wreck taking place on the start, coming to the start-finish line.
Well, and unfortunately for the 8 of Jeffries, it did look like him getting into the 90 of Mobbs was what caused that. So kind of a double whammy sort of heartbreak for that 8 machine of Jeffries. Not sure if Mobbs maybe missed a shift or something, but because he did cause the incident, not only was it the incident that ended the race, but he would have had to go to the extreme tail of the field anyway for having brought out that caution. So unfortunately for Jeremy Jeffries, just a complete no-win scenario all the way around for that 8 team who, you know, had so many hopes of making it through the playoffs with that victory that they got in the regular season, and just not to be.
But the drivers that were involved in this wreck, yeah, I'm just going to wait on the official word of who is where in the points after this one, because I don't think I'm going to be able to come up with an accurate reading of who is in and who is out. Another driver that was collected up in that, who I was just talking about prior to that restart that was sitting pretty, was Billy Elliser. So with him, Grant Wesley down there outside of the top 15, with the fact that we've got Hank Middleton winning his way in, Donnie Garrett up here, I don't know. I don't know who's in or who's out right now. I can't figure it out.
Well, point leader coming into tonight's race, we know Bob Seminara is currently sitting in the 5th position, so he will be good. We know that the 712 is going to be good. We know the cars that are finishing in the top 3, those cars are going to be good. Hank Middleton, Dante Ricky, the 77 of Garrett, all 3 of those cars also in contention for the playoffs and weren't too worried about the cut line. The 2 car of Middleton, probably the only car that was concerned, but with the win, that's going to lock him in. He's got nothing to worry about.
I'd say that Chuck McClure is safe. He came into this race 14 points ahead of the cut line, and while he does finish back in 13th, he does finish ahead of drivers that were behind him in points, like Billy Elliser, Grant Wesley, and Jeff Crivello. The big question mark is when we start getting down there from about 6th place down to that cut line, because Bernie Mobbs was collected up in that incident. He was behind the cut line. Jeremy Jeffries is out of the race. He was behind the cut line. Cut line driver Grant Wesley looks like he'll be finishing 20th here tonight. Billy Elliser right now marked back in 23rd. So it's all really going to come down, I think, to maybe single-digit points, maybe as low as 1, 2, 3 points as to who's going to get that final transfer spot and who isn't.
Absolutely. Flagger, checkered flag in hand, as you mentioned, Seth. The first victory for Hank Middleton in that number 2 car since March 5th, 2020. That's going to be a big celebration down in Victory Lane. We see Donnie Garrett gives him a little help with his first donut in a little bit over a year, and his competitors pull up to congratulate him as well. Not only is this a big win for Middleton, but this is going to be a very popular win amongst his peers as well.
Absolutely. You see Glenn Harris, Chuck McClure pulling down there to offer congratulations. And just to let Donnie know, I think Hank still knows how to do burnouts. Yeah, it's been a while since he's done it, but I think he knows how to do it. But Donnie wanted to make sure he doesn't forget.
Absolutely. And Hank Middleton, very humbly, with that little bit of a half donut that he was given from the 77 of Garrett after congratulations from the 17 of McClure, he is going to put his window net down and start to take the steering wheel out of his car. Very humble victory celebration for the number 2 of Middleton tonight on what is a huge victory for that team.
Came into this race 11th out of the 13 playoff contenders, 20 points behind the cut line. Not a must-win situation, but a win certainly doesn't hurt. And let's bear in mind as well, with Hank Middleton winning here tonight, that's 2 extra bonus points that he's going to carry into the round of 8 as well.
2 extra bonus points into the round of 8. It will also ensure that he is in the All-Star race on April 29th. I believe he may have been one of the drivers that was already qualified, but was he not? He's definitely in now. So that's something to celebrate about. You know, the 84 of Dante Ricky, man, that team is on a hot streak right now, Seth. 4 weeks in a row, 3 victories and a second place finish. So we know they're going to be extremely happy, as well as that 77 of Donnie Garrett. And it seems like we've gotten to the point where we talk to him week after week, but he's never disappointed because he's top 5 in them to death, just like he always says.
Absolutely. Now, as things stand right now, I believe 4 drivers we can speculate are going to be of the 5 that do not advance into the round of 8. Obviously, Chris Emery and Josh Metallic, since they did not take the green flag to start tonight's event. I think Bernie Mobbs might be in trouble, finishing down in 15th. He was a total of, I believe, 15 points behind the cut line, and he didn't finish all that far ahead of the cut line driver Grant Wesley, and then of course Jeremy Jeffries DNFing late in this race, and he was behind the cut line as well. It may come down to who's that one driver that's going to be scored 9th in the finishing standings here at the conclusion of round number 1.
Well, and we will have the updated unofficial point standings following playoffs race number 2 of season 52 for you in just a couple minutes, race fans. But remember, that is all going to remain unofficial until race admins and directors have a chance to review everything that took out on the racetrack. So we're going to give you the best rundown that we can here in just a couple minutes, but keep an eye on those point standings because they could still change a little bit. But one thing not changing right now, Victory Lane, that number 2 car, that's not being taken away from him.
And let's see if we can talk with our top 3 finishers here tonight. Let's kick things off with a driver that we do know will be advancing into the round of 8, a driver that missed the playoffs last season. That is Donnie Garrett. Hey, Donnie, it's Zach and Seth up here in the booth. You got us?
I got you guys. What's going on?
Oh, he didn't have the Ric Flair music ready, but nonetheless, Donnie, a great performance for you here tonight, heading into the round of 8. 3rd place, you're continuing to top 5 him to death. This 77 looks good every week.
I tell you what, man, I made a bad move at the beginning of that race and got shuffled to the back, and then on that one pit stop, I was real conservative because I knew I was going to be back a little ways, and I went in a little too light and come out a little too light and lost that draft, and then ended up at the back of the second draft, and I was in trouble. And then, like I say, that caution came out, and I knew I was good, and just trying to get to that top line at that point, and got up there. And of course, I got down there at the end. It was me and Dante again. I told him, I said, "Man, we've been here before." And old Hank, he come out of nowhere and got up there. So it was a great job for Hank, and glad to see old Hank win. And like I say, man, just rolling along with what I want to do.
Yeah, we've seen the last couple of weeks, you and that 2-car hook up pretty well. Hank almost pushed you to a win a few weeks ago, and we saw you hooking up, pushing him here on that final restart. Kind of looks like the 2 of your Chevrolets hook up pretty good. Is this a strategy we're going to continue to see in the second round of the playoffs?
Oh, yeah. There's guys I like to work with. Hank's one of them, and I can shove Hank like crazy, and it doesn't turn him. And I can hit him all the way around the track. And, man, we made up a lot of ground on that bottom. coming to the front. And then I think people started seeing it, and that's why they all jumped down there. Right before that pit stop, they all started jumping down there with us. And boy, once we got some guys down there, man, we were rolling. And but like I say, just moving on. Second in points, I love it. Just got to keep this going, man. Got to keep going.
Major Boy Zach up in the booth. Congratulations. Another solid top 3, finishing the night in 3rd position. Do us a favor. Walk us through that final lap, because there was a lot that happened. You guys took the green. The caution came out. There was the big move at the end of the backstretch, and then heading into the tri-oval, you guys were about 4 wide coming across the line trying to get that win.
Yeah, I had a move on the bottom, and I was like, like we talk about the math and all that crazy stuff, man. So much goes through your mind in 50 feet on that track that just, it's crazy. I had a move to the bottom, and I had a run. I had a nice move, and I said, man, if Jessica goes with me, I'm going to win this thing. But if she doesn't go with me, I'm going to hit that wall down there of air, and I'm going to end up about 5th or 6th. She had the same thoughts, because she went down there. We talked about it right there as we were under caution. And so if I'd have went, I went right at the same time she went. I think she could have pushed me, or we would have had one hell of a wreck. So again, I'll take 3rd. Like I say, I don't need to win yet. It's not about the wins yet. It's about good, solid, consistent finishes, and let's just get to this last race.
Okay, so I know you keep telling us this is all about good, solid, consistent finishes to get yourself into the Final Four, but in the back of your mind, is there at least a little bit of a spot where you're saying to yourself, I'm so close each and every week, that win is coming next week?
No, because I know they're going to block, and they're going to do everything they can to block you. And I've been down that road, and I'd rather have a top 3 than, like I say, get thrown up in the wall and end up 20th. And like I say, last race of the season, yeah, I'm gonna go. But right now, it ain't the risk and the reward. It just ain't there. And tonight, nobody was safe. I mean, I was 10 back, like you said last week. I was 19th out of falling out. So nobody other than Dante was safe in that top. All that top cars all the way to the back, man. You could have went from 2nd clear back to the back in one bad wreck and one bad move, and that's the part that scared me. So yeah, nobody was safe tonight, and like I said, that you got to keep that in the back of your mind. You got to race that way, and that's what I did.
Well, Donnie Garrett, the model of consistency throughout the season here in season number 52. Congratulations on a great, strong 3rd position again here tonight. Thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us?
I just want to give a shout out to Brittany for winning the fantasy league. She whipped the old boys' butts this time, man. She don't race, but she knows how to pick them, I guess. And I ended up finishing up 2nd in that damn thing. But we're gonna bring it back next year and have some fun with it. And like I said, that was great. I want to give a shout out to you guys to go back and watch these races, man. Just so professional. I mean, you guys could be out making millions if you wanted to with y'all's broadcast. You guys just feed off each other so good. The only thing it would make it better if I was up there with you, but I'm busy right now, so I can't come up there. But like I say, it just great racing, man. RTG, man, just no better place to race, man. This is just, I look so forward to this on Thursday nights, and like I say, just working towards this championship, man.
But what a run Donnie Garrett is on to start off the playoffs. Back-to-back podium finishes and easily advances into the round of 8. Congratulations on a great run here tonight, Donnie. We continue to look forward to seeing that consistency out of that 77.
Woo!
And let's now talk with a driver that's been very familiar with victory lane the last couple of weeks, but came up just short here tonight. Still advances his way as well into the round of 8, and that is Dante Ricky. Hey, Dante, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hi, guys.
Man, we talked about how last week you were chasing history. 3 wins in a row. Here tonight, it wasn't the official finish, but 21 thousandths of a second came between you and a 4th straight trip to victory lane. Talk about that run there through the trial, but you almost got him back at the start-finish line.
Yeah, that was another amazing race. And big congratulations to Hank to be able to win the race tonight and get it done. It was an outstanding race for all of us and a good win for Hank. And, I was a little bit surprised to come out of the pits there in 2nd place with Bob next to me. And I knew I was in a really good position at that point, and there weren't very many laps left in the race. But, it was just that exact lap where we were moving into that period of time where the race would end with a yellow. And, things happen up front all the time on restarts. And restarts are always a challenging time, especially that one lap where we're all getting back up to speed. There's a lot of runs and draft, and drivers have a lot more ability to get bigger runs and make moves on a situation like that. And, it's always a decision game of what line do I pick to stay in the lead, and what can I block, and what is just not doable, and being safe and getting the car to the finish with the best finish we can. And yeah, it was a tough race. We got those green flag pit stops and ran in the draft really well, and it was amazing to be able to come very close to winning another one. But hey, second place finish here is amazing as well.
All right, so Dante, we know that with your win last week, you came in tonight knowing you were going to advance into the round of 8. Next week, when we begin that round of 8, the slate's kind of wiped clean. The points are reformatted once again. So does the mentality change from the first round to the second round, or does it remain the same?
We have to go out there and get another race win or equally as good performance as we had in round number 1 to guarantee ourselves into the final 4. And our work is not done. Just as I've been saying, the mentality, it is a flip of the switch, and we want to go out and win every week to try and scare everybody for the next round as best as we can. So, we're going to try and compete for the win the next 2 weeks as well before that final race in April. And, whatever we get out of it, we'll do our best to make sure we're in that final 4 and go from there.
Dante, congratulations, another solid second place finish. Getting you, locking you in definitely after last week's playoff week number 1 win. But that last lap, man, I asked Donnie the same sort of thing. From the time that you guys took the green, the caution came out almost immediately, but you guys still had to race your way back around. We thought maybe you might get that 4th in a row. You headed off into turn 1. You had the lead down the back stretch. You lost the lead coming off of 4. You tried going for the lead. What exactly? Explain to people at home who don't do this on a regular basis what a ride of emotions that sort of finishes for you.
Oh yeah, these runs that people get in the draft come from 3 or 4 cars back. And when there's a crash, you only see the cars that are directly in your mirror, and you have to make a decision on what lane you're going to get into to secure your race lead. And knowing that the back straightaway comes with a lot of open space, and people have the ability to change their line, and then all of a sudden you have more numbers up top, and if there's a big gap behind you and they have a run, then you have to block. And sometimes the run is just way bigger than the safety of blocking allows. And you really just have to make sure that you do your best to be aggressive and have a shot at the race win, but also protect your current position so that you get the best finish possible. And down the back straightaway, I knew, oh yeah, they have a run. But then coming out of turn 4, I also knew that I still had a shot. So you don't give up, even if you think you're outnumbered. If the guy goes by you, sometimes the right decision is to be patient and make the right move and get in the right lane and line up with the right people. And I'll tell you, Donnie Garrett and I found each other there at the end of the race too. It was amazing to see him, and good to see him up there competing for the win as well. And I don't know if I made the right decision. I got to go back and look at the replay and see if there's anything I could have done better there on the last lap. But I knew everybody was going to make a move pretty much opposite to the lane I was in, because once you get 2 or 3 of these race wins, sometimes you have a magnet on you, and you have everybody that goes with you, and then other times you have races where people want to get some wins themselves too. So the strategy does change a little bit, but it's basically going to be like a clean slate, like the chase is restarting again next week, and hope to have another exciting finish again, just like this one.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you sort of a difficult question, because we know with the last 4 weeks, your worst finish being second place tonight, the previous 3 all being wins. We know that you have the skill, but I've got to ask you, when it comes down to those last 5 laps, what is it that you would prefer, luck or skill? Because we've seen a lot of guys just, get completely taken out of races, and even to this point tonight, the playoffs, because they're just in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and there's nothing that they can do about it. So when it comes to those last 5 laps for you, what is it that you're depending on? Is it the skill and the know-how to get around this track and work with your competitors, or does it take the equal amount of luck that it needs to get you up there and stay up there at the end of the race?
I would like it if our champion has the most skill. of all the drivers in this series, considering how prestigious these race wins are. Normally, the difficulty level and how good of a group of drivers we have to be able to run this close week in week out. I would like it to be the most skilled mindset of the race car driver that gets this done. However, with the timing of these cautions that end the race, sometimes you do have to have a little bit of good luck. So you can't ignore one or the other, but skill, intuition, that's what makes the right decision. And that's what gets a lot of these race wins more than any other luck situation I think that happens. So, yeah, sometimes you can catch luck. And I would say maybe a couple of my race wins this season have been purely based on the luck, and especially last week with that caution flag coming out right at the line. There was a lot of luck in that one, but I really do want to have that opportunity to showcase my skill and make some moves on the racetrack and show everybody I can get it done. And that's what would be the ultimate goal for me.
Dante, always a pleasure talking to you. No doubt in anybody's minds that you definitely have the skill to get it done. Thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
First, shout out to Robbie Nisus for the amazing opportunity to be able to drive his McDonald's Ford the past 3 weeks and also one additional race in the Dodge. It has been a tremendous experience to be able to drive the car and come home with first and second place finishes. And Robbie, we're going to keep it going, man. We're not done yet, and we're looking forward to what the weeks to come still bring here. Big thank you to RTG, all of our owners and admins, David Cannon, Sean Prime, Terry Bauman, our owners, and all of the drivers who come here week in and week out and make this place so exciting and such a great, fun place to race. Big thank you to my family, mom and dad, brother and sister, everyone watching, all of my friends. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And it's only going to get more exciting from here.
Well, Dante Ricky may not have been able to pull off the Fort Peak tonight, but in the last 5 weeks, he's not had a finish outside of second place. So congratulations on another runner-up finish here, Dante. Congratulations on advancing into that round of 8, and we look forward to seeing you continue this incredible momentum in the next round of the playoffs.
Thanks, guys.
And let's now see if we can go down to victory lane and talk with a first-time winner this season, Hank Middleton. Hey, Hank, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I do, sir.
Well, man, if we were conducting this interview 5 days ago, we would have to the exact 1 year since your last victory back on March 20th of 2020, back in season 49. It's been a long time since we've seen you in victory lane, but man, you made the playoffs this season, and this 2-car looks like it's going to be a threat to maybe make the final 4. What was going through your mind there on that final lap, realizing you had a little more than 2.5 miles between you and that checkered flag?
Well, I'll tell you, Zach, guys, it was just a little bit of a checkup there, but just momentum and handshaking and just hoping for the best. And I want to thank Donnie Garrett for being a big part of pushing me. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And that was the biggest thing, just having a good push partner.
Now, we ended up seeing this race kind of take on a couple of different aspects. We ended up seeing a lot of shuffling for position, 3-wide racing early on, but then we had that big wreck in the second half of the race. How much points calculating were you doing in your head as far as your positioning in the standings and where the cut line was? Or did you come into this race just with the mentality of, I got to go out there and win this thing?
I guess really just the mentality to win it, but I just want to have a good finish. If I won it, yeah, great. If I didn't, just want to have it's been an up and down season for me this year, which has not been too bad, but just want to have a good finish, and I don't want to wreck anybody, and the pits were good, and just want to try to stay clean and, below the radar if I can.
Hank, it's Zach. Good to talk to you, man. Happy
Man.
to see you in victory lane, man. I've been singing your praises all season 52 long, trying to tell all these guys, watch out for that number 2 car because he knows how to get out there and get it done. There's a lot of people at home that may not realize how much of a burden it is to carry around with you after you take a break and you come back and you can't get yourself back into victory lane. And once you can kind of crest that hill and get to the other side, explain to people how much confidence just a single win after such a long winless drought can really help your ability out there on a racetrack.
Well, I tell you, it can be, I think the biggest thing is pitting. If you get rusty on that can be an issue. I did get a new wheel and pedals. It's been a big help. But you still got to get back in the groove again to some degree, and I got to earn guys' trust again. Just it's just a process like anything else. But what a win! It's just I'm still shaking a little bit.
Okay, so that's going to give you a little bit of bonus points heading into playoff round number 2, getting this victory. So that's going to be a huge help for you in playoff round number 2. What's the game plan? Go out there, try to get another one of those wins, or do what the Donnie Garrett method is and just try to top 5 them to death?
Well, I guess both really. Just be consistent, stay out of trouble, have a good pit stop, and I think that's the key to it right there.
Hank, I love you, man. It's great to talk to you. As an announcer, I'm supposed to be unbiased, but don't tell anybody. I've been pulling for you all season long. So I'd like to see you get out there and get it done. Thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us tonight, Hank?
Just thank all the RTL guys and RTG admins, all of them, and you guys, what you guys do. You guys put on a fantastic show and announcing job. And Zach, we've been in the past together, man. I hope to have you back on track eventually sometime. But
yeah, I can't wait, man.
Appreciate you guys, and guys, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Well, we came into tonight not knowing the other 7 drivers advancing into the round of 8. We know one now. Hank Middleton with the win here tonight locks himself into the second round of the playoffs after a long winless streak. It's great to see you go to victory lane here tonight, Hank. Congratulations, and go and enjoy it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Well, Zach, they haven't been reformatted, but the official, well, not, I shouldn't say official, the unofficial points from playoff race number 2 are in. And right now, we've got a pretty good idea of who those 8 drivers are advancing into the next round.
Man, I'll tell you what, Josh Metallic, Chris Emery, we knew coming into the night with them not starting that they would be eliminated. Unfortunately for Jeremy Jeffries, Bernie Mobbs, Billy Elliser, the 3 drivers running at the end of the race that were not able to progress to round number 2 of the playoffs. Heartbreak for those guys, but look who's sitting in that 8th position. Grant Wesley just barely making his way in. So that shakeup that we thought that we were going to see, man, it's a good thing you didn't get that calculator out, Seth, because I think that would have been a whole lot of head work for naught.
I think there would have been a whole lot of errors as well, because, I mean, if we look down around that cut line, how close it was for some of these drivers. Crivello and Despirito with completely totaled race cars. They're going to be 4 points to the good after that checkered flag waved. Hank Middleton was already locked in with the win, so we really don't look at his numbers. Wesley, the cutoff line driver, and Billy Elliser, who did advance into the round of 8 last season, came up 3 points short here tonight. There were only a handful of drivers that were comfortably in. There were about 4 or 5 drivers that, if it had swung maybe 2 or 3 more positions one way or the other, they could have either been advancing or possibly not advancing.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, these are still unofficial until the admins and race directors can review this. But right now, Bob Seminara, still your point leader over Donnie Garrett, Dante Ricky with his 2nd place finish tonight. He's going to move up to that 3rd position. Chuck McClure falls 1 to 4th. Jeff Crivello, despite the struggles, takes advantage of Joe Despirito's bad luck. Jeff Crivello has quietly put together an excellent season to this point, Seth. He and Despirito currently tied for 5th in points. And as you mentioned, Middleton, Wesley will round out our playoff grid for round number 2.
Now, if we look at the 3 drivers that were part of our Final Four from last year, the one driver that has seemed to remain consistent in the first 2 playoff races this year has been Bob Seminara. Grant Wesley's run into issues. Joe Despirito has run into issues. So, do these 2 mount a comeback here in round 2 to advance into the Final Four for the 2nd straight year? Or do we see somebody else here that might sneak up there and maybe steal away one of those Final Four positions?
You know, Seth, with 2 weeks remaining until the final round of cuts, honestly, I'm going to tell you here, I'm not entirely sure what the answer to that is, because I think every one of those drivers is capable of going up there and locking themselves into that Final Four. So hypothetically speaking, if Hank Middleton goes out again next week and wins next week's race as well, that's going to bounce somebody else from the top 4 that was in it in season number 51. So honestly, I think this is going to come down to playoff round number 4 with the turnover that we've seen, with the big point swings that we've seen. Again, Joe DeSpirito just barely able to hold on and make it through. And this was something that we saw out of him last season, getting into the final 4. Ultimately, he went in and got that championship. But I don't know, man, he looked so solid through the first 2 rounds of last season that this just isn't Joe DeSpirito form of seasons 50 and 51. And I think a lot of other guys have taken notice of that too. And all of his competitors would love to capitalize on that.
Absolutely. Well, Hank Middleton here tonight, kind of pulling off what we've known Dante Ricky to do. Never lay down a qualifying lap, started 29th and finishes with the victory here this evening, moving his way into the round of 8. Now, last year, the entire first round of the playoffs was swept by playoff contenders. It happened here again this season. Last year, round 2 was swept by playoff contenders. Will the same be said when we get to next week and the week following the second elimination race determining the final 4? We're going to have to wait and see. But Zach, we had so many different questions coming into tonight. Who was going to advance? Who was going to fall out? We've gotten those answers now. The stage is set for round number 2. Cannot wait for next week, but appreciate you joining the booth tonight for this one.
Seth, a pleasure as always. Appreciate everything that you do. Matt, everybody at the FRN, the Racing Network there, appreciate all of you guys for allowing me to come do this. The RTG admins, owners, race directors, drivers, everybody, thank you for all of your support. And of course, as always, you, the viewers at home, we appreciate you being here. If you thought round number 1 and the first 2 races were exciting, don't want to miss round number 2, because even Seth and I, we have no clue what's going to happen. So thanks again, Seth. Talk to you next week.
13 drivers entered, 8 move on, and 4 will battle for the championship. The precursor race, green flag, flies next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Zach and I'll be there on the call to bring you all the action here from Talladega in the RTG Talladega Challenge Series. For Zach Freemo, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.